It really comes down to the way you treated people. That's what they're going to remember the most. If I can leave that as my legacy in this profession, that I treated everybody fairly and helped to try to promote and move them up in the organization and advance their careers, then I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't want anything else other than that.
Hello and welcome to The Clear Voice, brought to you by Clear Career Professionals. I'm your host, James Groom. Welcome back to part 2 of the Jim Devlin episode. It's taking a little while to get this to you guys, so we do apologize, but I think you'll enjoy it. We are picking up right where we left off. The last question I asked and Jim's last answer is going to be what you hear in just a second. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time. I kind of want to talk about moving into the dark side. What made you decide that ACM was the next step, and how's that been going, and what do you want to accomplish over there?
You know, I always thought I was going to retire as a chief, whether it was with this organization or if I got the burr to go somewhere else and do what I did here. I figured it was going to be a chief, and I really didn't think much about the assistant city manager role or ACM or even city management. But I was getting to a point in my career where I'm a firm believer that I can only take things so far, right? And I can only take an organization so far. And I know that there are qualified people in this world that are way better at this than I am. It's kind of the old adage, once you're the SWAT operator, right? And you've been doing it for so many years, and it's time for you to transition from being the boots on the ground to training the people to do it, right? It's kind of my thought process. So organizationally, I thought about that the same way. It wasn't that I didn't have any more to accomplish, because we still had tons of stuff to accomplish that I, as the chief, couldn't get done by myself. I had a discussion with my boss, my city manager. He's a 30 plus year city manager, right? I mean, he's been in this business for a very as long as I've been in municipal service. And so we were just having a conversation about, well, what's next? I had friends, peers, chiefs that had made this jump. A couple close friends that I figured were going to be super chief law enforcement people for the rest of their careers and taking on major roles of major communities. And next thing you know, they're going to become an assistant city manager in the community where they were the chief. So I was having a discussion with him about that. And I was like, do you ever think that there may be an opportunity for that to occur in Hewitt? Unbeknownst to me, those conversations had been taking place outside of my purview. And I don't think it really was me to begin with, but I think our elected officials were very keen on succession planning. That conversation came up with the manager about succession planning. He was new, right? This first year here. And he said, "Oh yeah, I got you. We'll start working on some of that, but I need to get my feet wet and figure out who is who and what's going on in the city, et cetera." I think the next year it came back up around evaluation time, and he said, "I think I've got an idea on what we're going to do." And I think the third year they really pressed him. He was thinking about moving me next door. I didn't know. I didn't have any idea that I was going to even consider me. We sat down and we talked about what it is that we both wanted to accomplish, right? What were my goals? What did I want to continue to do? What were his goals? What did he envision the ACM position to be? I had a good long conversation. Then he said, "I don't want an answer. Tell me," I think it was October. I don't even remember what month we had this conversation. It was maybe August. He said, "You can let me know in October." So I was like, okay, so I had a lot of thinking to do, right? A lot of decision making. And of course, got with my family and asked them their thoughts. And, it was kind of like, wow, I figured you'd be chief forever. There's never always a forever. And so anyway, looking and talking to some of my peers that this had happened with, I discovered that it's almost a natural progression for a chief to move into this role as an assistant city manager. And I'm continuing to learn a lot of this. And I've seen leadership folks that have put on programs in the city management side that talk about this, because, you've got a chief of police that they're the subject matter expert in their department. And this is a good and a bad. So you're the subject matter expert, but you're around a lot, especially in a community the size of Hewitt, you're around a lot of the other things that are going on in the organization, other parts of the organization, utilities and the court, and so you have a really good taste for exactly what's kind of happening, which is a good and a bad thing, because I thought I knew a lot, but it turns out I didn't know a whole lot of nothing about everything else in the organization. So I'm having to learn a lot of that. Going back to being the subject matter expert, you were the guy, you were the chief. They would ask you about these things, right? You had all the answers for that, and now you transition back into a second in command. So there's a lot of servant leadership now that I'm using, because now I'm here supporting my boss, who's got 7 bosses. It's been an excellent move. I'll say that. I've learned a lot, and I'm still learning. I'm continuing to learn. I learn every day about the organization. I have a good grasp of the organization, but now I'm getting into not leading the department, but now I'm leading directors, right? So now I've got directors in the organization. So we're trying to do some of the same things that I think I accomplished in the police department with directors, watching them, how they work, and learning about their trades and their skills, their character, and how they operate. What do they do on a daily basis? So I'm very interested and try to every day learn something about another section of our organization and what they do and how they do it. It's been a good move. It's been a really good move.
What would you say are the greatest skills that you developed as a chief that translate really well into what you're doing now?
We talked about relationship building. Relationship building is huge. Nothing gets done without the relationships, right, that you form, whether it's with your councils or the people that you work with on a daily basis. Empathy is a big one, right? I've had to learn that over the course of my career. I always think I was an empathetic person, but to lead with some empathy and some inspiration has become a focus of myself, and being introspective and thinking about, well, how do I do these things? How do I get our directors to move in these directions, right? To think differently than just, well, this is, we're just going to go out and we're going to fix it. We'll go out and fix it, but explain the person that has the problem, explain to them what we're doing, why it's broken, and why we're fixing it, and what we're going to do, right? You got to do that across the board. Collaboration. I mean, holy cow. Being able to work across departments, which was one of the issues that we had years back. The organization was really siloed. I mean, everybody was just in their own. They were doing their own thing. Police department didn't know much of what the utilities department did, right? They go out after hours and they fix water leaks. Well, I mean, there's a lot more to it. General services, they take care of the parks. No, they handle the streets, and they do that. So getting everybody together and understanding what each component of the organization does to collaborate, right? Well, when I need something that's not necessarily in the realm of the police department or the fire department, well, I need to be able to reach out to the director down at general services and get barricades or get, cones or, something that we may not have, and also get them to understand that takes time away from whatever it is they're doing as well, right? So having those contacts and the collaboration certainly is a big deal. I think a lot of what I'm starting to learn is about the personal growth, right, for myself. In the police department, a training opportunity is provided. I mean, you're a chief. You came up the same way that I came up. Training is abundant. We can go to the chief leadership series and get our week worth of training in, maybe get something from there. You certainly can go to some of the TML courses or something else that's going on. As a chief, I didn't have a whole lot of time, at least in my organization, for the personal growth aspect. Moving now to where I'm at, I'm finding myself more focused on a lot of that. And I'm not saying personal growth to make more money. I'm talking about my personal growth in leading an organization. I've always thought I was really good at leading an organization, and I still think that I am, but I also still think that I can be better. I'm learning how to take care of me, right? So I can be my best. Because, you come in and you're in a foul mood. Well, you know how that day is going to end with everybody that you work with. You know exactly how it's going to end. They're going to take whatever you got going on, they're going to take it home with them. And they're going to talk to their significant other, spouse, and be like, man, you can't believe ACM. Boy, he was so mad. And it's just, it just builds. Being able to recognize when I'm not where I need to be. Like I need to make sure and focus on where I'm at on my best. And that's tough. It's tough to do. And it's a little different because I actually have time to do that. When I was at the police department, there wasn't a lot of time to do that, because it was just one thing after the other. And right, it's 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and the phone is ringing and people are calling you, and we got this going on, we got that going on. Though a lot of that, it wasn't major stuff going on, but there wasn't a whole lot of time for me to reflect on me and how I affect the organization and how I affect the culture and how I affect the change. To me, I think that's becoming one of the major things. I recognized it and I knew I didn't have enough time to focus on that as the chief. But now that I have the time, a little more time to do that, I'm really zoning in on that to try to make sure that I am the best that I can be for the organization. Is everybody going to be all hip to what Jim Devlin wants to do? Probably not. But I also understand and have a keen ear to listen and hear those things and understand those challenges, because I may not know all the challenges. I may think I have this fantastic idea and somebody raises their hand and says, "No, that's going to be a problem." And you got to be able and be humble enough to say, "Okay, well, why is it not going to work? Tell me why it's not going to work." And then together we'll collaborate and we'll figure out how to fix it and make it work the way that we need to. I think the service side of it has always been there. I think even from early on in the career, we're servants. That's just carried with me for my entire career, understanding that in order to lead, we've got to serve first, right? And vice versa. And so being able to do that from a position where traditionally, well, I'm the chief, I don't have to, well, I didn't feel that way. I was kind of a more hands-on type of person, and felt like being out there, being with the people, being with the officers, serving the community to make it the best community that we possibly could. And so that's always been something that's been with me. But yeah, I mean, this personal reflection, this personal growth is a new journey. I'm excited about it, but I think it's also going to make me a better leader for sure.
Yeah, I'd say that your experience is probably the same as mine when I started after you in law enforcement, talking about personal growth, your not necessarily leadership skills, but it's more like the taking care of yourself, the mental health aspect. You didn't want to talk about that because you probably would find yourself out of a job pretty quickly. And I'm certainly glad that that's changed. For us, it's hard because like that's how we came up. That's one of the things that I've been really impressed with the new people. It's taken a lot for me to like be okay with it and be understanding, because they would come to things that like were never even a thought of my mind, that being a serious thing, and they would want to talk about it. Really, if you've been in this job for 20 years, especially if you step up in a chief role, you have to understand like it's changed a lot. They're getting taught that up front, and you definitely have to do it for yourself as well.
I think it's a great thing. I mean, over the last decade, I think we've made, excellent advancements in that. It wasn't always that way. It was really, you go to something that really, really bothered you, it was just kind of suck it up, right? Over the long haul, we have now determined and discovered that that's not good, because a lot of us are not in a good place mentally. I think it's important that we continue to push the mental health aspect of it. And it's not. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation, and I know we're going to talk about the TCMI class, but this is where it's at, and that I had this conversation because this subject came up. The mental health came up about on the city administration side, and though it's not as cumulative as public safety, right, and police and fire, but there's still life, right? People have to go through life. They have the challenges that everybody has, and then we still have to deal with the day in day out work that we have here in our own organization, in our own community, and making it the best that it possibly can be requires a lot of attention and intentionality to make sure we get that done. So cumulatively over the course of time, that can create some issues, and making sure that we are, again, our best that we can possibly be. I asked a few questions about it and the mental health aspect of it. I was put on the TCMA mental health committee at that meeting. So, I guess it's part of that challenger part of me, but I'm happy to do it because we have struggled with the mental health stuff on the public safety side for years, right? And if you've ever been through a fitness for duty as a result of one of these, you understand how difficult it is from the employer and a personal perspective. I care about my people. I care about every one of them. And to see somebody to have to struggle and go through something like that, it's heartbreaking, and then you have to be official about it, right? And go through the prescribed procedures on the employment side of it. I always hated that. but it was a necessity in most instances. If we can do better, not only, I mean, we're doing better on the public safety side, but if we can even do better administratively, right, at City Hall and build some of that resiliency that we're now pushing towards public safety folks, maybe we have a recognition of these things sooner than before it's too late. I don't see a whole lot of it on the city side, but I can see it beginning to happen. I can see that this has the potential to create some issues as we move forward. I was kind of honored that they asked me to be part of the committee. I'm not Mr. Mental Health in any way, but I think I can help navigate at least to some answers, because there's a lot of people that have done a lot of research into this that are way smarter than me, and it's already been put out there. We just need to go tap into it and design it for, the administrative side of it. It's a great movement forward, and I think it's something that's definitely needed, especially listen to some of the conversations from some of the people on the panel that spoke to us. And it wasn't some of the things that we would deal with, like on a major event, and something that bothers us. But they had their own things going on, and it created the same type of reaction that we would get as law enforcement, just in a different context and in a different world, based on life and some of the things they got going on. Because I mean, it's when you're a city manager, there's still a lot of high pressure there, right? I mean, you got several bosses. And so, everybody may be on the same page. Some may be a little bit off a little bit and in the direction. But, again, that relationship building with those people that are elected officials, that's a constant job, and has the ability to change every 2 years, because you may get new people that are elected. You take on a lot of responsibility, just as if something happened in the police department, at the end of the day, I was responsible. If something happens in the city, ultimately city manager is responsible.
It's funny because we did a episode on Burnout with Brad Stafford, who was a longtime city manager. That was one of the things that, while we were talking about it and listening to his story, it was maybe a little sad, maybe a little ironic, and good that they're, TCMA's starting to look at that. But the advancements that we made in public safety on the mental health side had to be put in place by city managers. And at the end of the day, it didn't seem like they were looking out for themselves. They could have been and should have been probably, but they were focused on their people. And just like you said, you're worried about when people are going through bad times. It may not be firsthand smoke, but they're exposed to a lot of secondhand smoke, and there's a lot of pressure, I'm sure. Just like when you're the chief, like you're not the one out on the street all the time. But when I laid down and go to sleep, sometimes I was really worried about like what's going on. And, you get that phone call in the middle of the night.
It has an impact on you. I mean, you can't tell me when you were laying down and your phone rang at night, your adrenaline didn't spike, because you knew there's only one reason why they're calling it, right? I mean, that happens. It's a different type of trauma. Yeah, I'm not out there, but being woken up from a dead sleep with your phone ringing, it's got to do something to you, right? I mean, I know that it does. The city management side, I think, again, like and you did it very well, secondhand smoke. But it's still, the city doesn't shut down. I mean, it's all day, every day, 24/7. Maybe the city hall is shut down, but something major happens, utility issue, major water sewer leak, or we lose power at a pump station. They're going to call the manager, right? And then there's going to be decisions that have to be made on how we're going to address the issue. And then, once a decision is made, then it's, now we got to contact the council, and we got to do, it may come down to, we got to call a special called meeting to pay for, $25,000 worth of pump or whatever. That takes you out of that normal routine. I think it has a cumulative impact, not as much as the public safety, but I think over the long haul, it could have a cumulative impact. I say that and to kind of go back a little bit, but with that relationship building, I think part of that assists in some of that, and some of those high stake, those conversations that the manager has to have with the bosses. Again, even in the relationship building, that's a constant. You've got to continue to work on that, and that's probably an everyday affair. At least it is here. I mean, I know that my boss works very hard to keep them informed about things that are happening within the community. Because if you don't, you're going to get the phone call as soon as something is out on a piece of land that's not developed and they're turning dirt. The phone calls start coming in. What are they building?
Well, you mentioned the Texas City Management Institute. That's put on by TCMA, and that's a new program.
In conjunction with TML. I was honored to be the graduate of the inaugural course with several of my peers. It was a really good course. It's 3 sessions over the course of, I think, about 6 months. It's a Thursday and a Friday. There's a capstone project that's involved in it. So if anybody's watching this and you have a problem that is occurring in your community and you don't want to pay $30,000 for a consultant, you can submit that when they do the next TCMI course. One group did a Main Street renovation. Another group did succession planning for a community, for an organization in the administration. And then our group, we created a continual operations plan assessment under FEMA guidelines for all hazards for a community.
That sounds like more than a $30,000 project.
It sounded ominous when we read it, and everybody saw FEMA and went, ugh. But it turned out to be really, really good. It was really eye-opening. And once we realized what it is that we were trying to build and create, it went really smooth. And the team was phenomenal. Very smart people on the team, way smarter than me, and created a product that was accepted really quick by the community that asked for it to be done. We were pretty much done with our project, about 95% of it done with the project before we even had our second session with the TCMI. We did one session, put some work in, and boom, we lucked out and created the project. It was an opportunity to hear from all kinds of folks from across the state. Some of the senior advisors for TML, which are, retired city managers, long tenured city managers from across the state. Got to visit with them, listen to some of the things that they have dealt with over the course of their careers. We had some leadership training. We had some crisis communications training. It was eye-opening. And of course, the opportunity, the networking with our peers, right? These folks that were in there, most of them are in some section of the administration, some city managers, some ACMs, finance. I think we had an economic development person in there. So listening and having those conversations about, our communities and listening to some of the things that other folks have done in the past, it was really helpful, very insightful. I took away quite a bit from just those 3 sessions, made a lot of new friends, new contacts. And, I got a list. I have my list of things that I want to kind of get accomplished for the organization that I think will make the organization better, right? More connected with the community, specifically the administration side of it. When you think about our communities and our organizations, most of the time administration is pretty, I don't know, estranged may be a bad word, but we're kind of the offset, right? From the community. PD and FD are out there, and fire departments saving cats out of trees, and police departments, doing National Night Out, and the public works guys. I mean, but even part of public works and the utility guys and the general services in the court, we have an opportunity to kind of do some different things and invite people in to really understand what those subsets of the organization do. Kind of akin to a citizens police academy. I know one organization, City of Round Rock, has done this, and it's been extremely successful. That's where I got the idea from Joe. So I certainly would like to kind of implement some of that. But there's a lot of good stuff that I got out of it. It's not technically a certification, but it is professional. Some pretty good professional development, and I took a lot away from it. I was honored to be at least allowed to go to it. It was a great deal. It opened my eyes up. I mean, heck, I got put on a committee. I at least got that out of it, so I'm trying to slowly but surely move my way a little bit more into the Texas City Management Association, kind of like what I did with the Texas Police Chiefs Association, ultimately becoming a regional director and on the executive team. I'd like to get to some of that with TCMA. As kind of some of the emerging leaders. I'm 31 years in the business now, so there were a lot of younger people in there, way younger than me. I had one tenured city manager. What did he called me? The resident chief of police. And I never said I was a chief of police. I guess maybe it was on my questioning or my comments. I don't know. I had as much time, and not that I've got 30 years in administration, but I've got 30 years in municipal government, majority of it in the police department. But, it's getting pretty close to the same tenure as some of the people that spoke to us. There are a lot of young emerging leaders that were in that group, which were, I was honored to work with and visit with and give my perspective on how we deal with things, in our organization.
Yeah, it sounds like a great course. That networking and getting the ideas from every place. That's what I loved about law enforcement and local government is There's very few novel ideas. You may make it your own, but it's nice being able to borrow somebody's template and create it for your community rather than trying to figure out something new.
I agree. I think that's one of the greatest assets that we have being leaders in public safety is getting to know the peers from across the state and seeing what fits and doesn't fit. And there's been plenty of things that we came up with that didn't fit. So we got rid of them and came up with something different as far as the organization is concerned. I try not to do that. I mean, I believe in the mission and the core values. I don't like coming back from a training and say, "Oh, everybody stop. We're not doing that anymore. We're doing this." It's got to be consistent with what we came up with, right? It's got to fit into that mold. And we may tweak some things based on training or based on a program that somebody else is doing, but I don't want to rewrite the whole thing. I've seen organizations that do that, and it just creates chaos. It's just not good. It's not good for the organization.
We'll be looking for future classes there. That sounds like a good program. Before we hang up here, can you tell us a little bit about the area, the Waco area, Hewitt specifically, and then maybe some of your sister cities around you? What makes Hewitt and the Waco area special?
I called this area the real Central Texas. I've seen Austin referred to as Central Texas, but we're really the Central Texas. We're, I think, about an hour away from Austin and roughly an hour away from Dallas. Hewitt is the second largest city in McLennan County. Basically, we're just south of Waco. We butt up to Waco. Waco is the largest organization in our area, which makes it an interesting dynamic because there's a lot of collaboration amongst the cities to get services done, right? You know, when you start talking about water, wastewater, a lot of things along that nature. So you've got to, you know, it's not we're self-contained. We've got other entities, large organizations that we have to deal with on a daily basis to get some services provided. We provide our own police and fire. The county basically is contracted with an ambulance service, so nobody really has their own ambulance service in the county. Maybe some smaller entities like up in the city of West. I think maybe they have their own EMS provider, but you know, we've got communities that are up and coming. A lot of land areas. You know, City of Robinson, which is to the east of us on Interstate 35, is going to be a big community. They have a lot of land. You've got smaller communities like Lorena, Woodway, which is a public safety department, so they're cross-trained police and fire, which you don't really find so much around here. And I knew of some in the North Texas area, but still aren't a lot of those up there either. You got Belmead, Lacey, Lakeview, West, you got McGregor, where SpaceX is at. So if you ever do come down here and they decide to test a rocket engine, if you don't know that it's going off, you'll think the world is coming to the end. Nobody told me about SpaceX when I moved here. They did a rocket test. I think it was on probably a Friday evening, and I was out on my back porch, and it's almost you could feel the concussion. And McGregor's, you know, probably 20 minutes away from me driving. I could see a glow, and I thought, oh, this is the end. We're done. And then it stopped, and I came in Monday morning and talked to the chief. I was like, did you hear whatever that was going off on Friday? I asked, that's SpaceX. So, well, you guys could have told me. I thought I was going to die. It's a pretty powerful rocket test. They don't happen as often as they used to, but they still occur. And it's now, if you're not familiar with the area, it'll freak you out. But those of us that live here, you're just kind of like, you know, that's just SpaceX doing it. So there are a lot of great things going on here. I mean, economically, there's people that are looking in this area simply because of the central location in between the Metroplex and in between the Austin area. It's not built up as much as those areas are. So there's a lot of room to grow, which is great for us because we have the ability to expand into some retail and commercial, you know, for sales tax, which, you know, I think is going to be important as we move forward in our municipalities based on some of the things going on down at the legislature with property taxes and things of that nature. There's a big focus from the elected officials in the city for development on some of the commercial and retail, which we talked to our director of community services, and we've always got people looking, right? You know, I mean, we don't know who, but we've always got people looking. So it makes us feel good that we're a community, a strong enough of a community holistically. I mean, from water and sewer to ISO ratings to public safety. to the crime rate, to all the things that companies look for, that they're wanting to come here. They're wanting to build here. They're wanting to establish brick and mortar long-term things, which I find great. I call them partners because ultimately at some point in time, we're going to be partners with them because they're part of the community and we're going to have to assist them in providing the best services that we can. But when they make that decision based on all the metrics that they look for to decide to build their business, their retail business, that means something, right? I mean, to me, it means that we're heading in the right direction. We're going down the right path as an organization and as a city to make one of these companies want to come here. HEB is a perfect example. They purchased property in our community. I wish they'd start building today, but it's going to be a little bit. But they've made an investment because of who we are, and and there's probably tons of other stuff about trade maps and where people are coming from to buy things and et cetera, on and on. But it's enough. It's enough that they've made the decision is we want to be there, right? And that's a great thing for our community. It's a great thing for them, and I want to continue to push that for our city and for our citizens to have those amenities that we find attractive and that we want to help us continue to sustain our growth and deal with the challenges of the future. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, we're a partner in a lot of things with a lot of the cities around here, like a regional animal shelter. We talked about sewer and water. We're partners with almost everybody in that. So that's been a little bit different for me. Where I came from, it was pretty much all self-contained. We did it on our own. Navigating some of those partnerships, and again, back to the relationship building becomes key. Being able to call the city manager of Waco and have a conversation with him is important, because we need to be able to discuss things on that level. Same thing with all the other communities around here. And we meet as city managers and assistant city managers. We meet at least once a month for lunch, just to kind of talk shop and, what's going on in our communities. Has anybody experienced this? Or, and I think that's important. We did that as chiefs around here weekly. Actually, we had a weekly lunch on Tuesday, which I found extremely beneficial, especially getting early on and, getting on when I got here at first. We didn't experience that where we came from. So getting to know our communities and partnering with who's who and who's got what and what can we do for one another became important. They've continued that with the city manager level. And I think that's extremely beneficial for our county to have those conversations. And if something needs to be deeper than a lunch meeting, well, then we can schedule it right then and there and go have a visit later on and have a more deep impact conversation about whatever the issues are.
Well, it's got to be some sort of huge multiplier in value to the citizens in the Waco area and all the cities when all the cities can share services with each other. I mean, clearly economies of scale are going to say that you're going to do it better and cheaper usually. So that's got to be a great value add for your citizens.
And I think it's important that we continue to tell that story too. I mean, we did it on the police side, not only through our traditional media, but through our social media pages about the collaboration that we had in public safety, police and fire. I mean, across the board. We have interlocals, we have the actual documents. But, if we called somebody, they were coming, and we've had some critical major incidents that have taken place. One is the explosion at the West fertilizer plant where we all responded there. I was even there. But we provided staff and, through the entire cleanup and getting everything restored back to where it needed to be. We were there for quite a while. They didn't have a very large staff and their community was in shambles. So we were providing security. So each entity, each organization, each city was providing officers to work, external security in basically around the town. So it didn't overwhelm what they currently had, and DPS and the game wardens, they were there. And then, of course, you got the Twin Peaks event that took place. And that was, again, a lot of collaboration because, you show up on a scene there and, not to get into an investigative part of it, but some of those people that were potential suspects out there, they didn't all just live in Waco. They lived in other communities. Having to partner with some of those, with our law enforcement professionals to deal with that. And again, same issue. We help provide security there. Had detectives help assist with crime scene recovery and some things like that. So yeah, seeing that on the public safety side, and of course there's countless examples of fire departments because they've got, mutual aid and auto aid and all that stuff that they've got going on. But transitioning to the city side of it, I think it's an important story to tell because it ensures that we have we have been doing it the way it should be done. It doesn't cost as much as what everybody thinks it is because we have a partnership versus sole source doing something like that. So it's part of the story I want to continue to tell and push. Be a good partner and be a good steward of the city and let everybody know that those are the things that we strive to do to try to get the things that you want as a citizen, but try to keep the cost as low as we can possibly make them.
I think that's a great lesson for lots of areas that don't work so well with each other. Before we wrap up, I've got one more question for you. You can leave us with a little bit of advice. We talk to MPA students sometimes on this program. We try to maintain a pulse with them. And some of those MPA students are going straight from high school into college and into grad school, and they're super excited about entering into public service. What advice would you have for them?
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I mean, that's the first thing that I would tell you. You're going to have to know yourself very well. You're going to have to know your worth. I mean, obviously you're doing this for the right reasons. You're doing it for public service. We need more people to do that. We need folks to step up that have that service in their heart for the communities. Sometimes it's a thankless service. Nonetheless, it is absolutely 100% important because nothing would get done if we didn't have the folks that we have that want to get into this career, right, and provide that service. Focus on those relationships and be very introspective into yourself, right? Work on your personal development. And again, that's a journey in itself. There are a lot of smart people that get into this business, and as we discussed about the technical side of it, that's one portion of it. We can learn a lot of those things and get the technical proficiencies done and out of the way. But I know, most folks in this business know that it really comes down to relationship building, being able to build those bridges, connected. And it really doesn't matter whether you're the fire chief or the police chief or the city manager, but being able to build those bridges and also understand that not everybody's going to agree with you. You may think you have the best idea in the world, and there's going to be somebody that doesn't agree or is going to try to shoot holes in the idea. And it may not be intentional, but they want to play devil's advocate and see what could possibly go wrong, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. It's going to be a long journey for you, and make friends. Rely upon your peers, because they're going to be able to get you out of some very difficult times and jams, because there are many people that have gone through a lot of things, and especially some of the more tenured people, they may have the answer. They may not have all the answers or 100% of the answer, but at least they can start pointing you in the right direction, and it's important. So that goes along with that relationship building. Be the best that you can possibly be, and strive for excellence, no mediocrity. Strive to be the best, whatever position, whether you're the finance director or the manager or the chief or whatever. Strive to be the best that you can be. Be introspective. Understand when you're not at your best, and always try to be at your best personally and professionally to advance the organization, because that's really what it's about.
Definitely. Well, after 31 years, is it worth it?
Definitely. 100%. I'm not sure that I could do anything else. Didn't know that I would be where I am today. Wasn't even a thought, a couple years ago. But I don't know what else I would do. That's part of the, if I retire, I've got to actually be retired. I don't know that I mean, I'm sure there's a job that's out there for me, but I don't want to say I don't know anything else, but I've done this for so long. It's pretty easy. I think it's easy for the most part. It's challenging, but at the end of the day, it's still a relatively easy career, and 100% worth it. I wouldn't change it for the world. I was actually pre-planning that you were going to ask me that. I was going to joke and say, yeah, I'd go back and be a firefighter, but I'm not going to do that. But no, it's 100% worth it. I feel like at the end of the day, when I am done with the profession, they're not going to remember you for a lot of stuff, right? I mean, building a new facility, or putting a new training program together, or increasing the budget line item for that training, right? So you can send people to the FBI National Academy or to ILEA or something like that. That'll be long forgotten, but it really comes down to the way you treated people. That's what they're going to remember the most. If I can leave that as my legacy in this profession, that I treated everybody fairly and helped to try to promote and move them up in the organization and advance their careers, then I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't want anything else other than that.
they'll always remember the gym conversations and the conversations behind vineyards.
I don't really think we had to have too many of them. We had a few, but it wasn't too many.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you for taking the time today. Thank you for investing in my career and everybody else's careers that you've done over the years. To our listeners, thank you for what you do day in and day out in your communities. Please check out clearcareerpro.com and follow Clear Career Professionals on LinkedIn to see our latest job opportunities. And like and subscribe to the podcast, and we will catch you next time.